Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new to my channel, I film one of these videos every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. So this is my reading week from the 3rd to the 9th of March. I am participating in middle grade March, so half of this book wrap up is going to be the middle grade books that I have read, and then I will talk about the adult books that I've read just to keep them sort of separate. So if you're here for the middle grade books, that's what I'm going to talk about first. I read 7 books this week and I started an 8th. I have read a total of 1,992 pages and my yearly reading total is currently at 58 books for the year, which means I have crossed over my Goodreads goal, which is always 52 books. So I'm happy. So there is, no pressure at all for the rest of the year, which is fantastic. Okay, so starting off with the middle grade books that I have read this week. The first one was The Wild Robot Escapes by Peter Brown. This is the second book in the Wild Robot series. I read the first one in January for Term Infinity and Beyond Round 2, and I really enjoyed this story. This is about a robot who originally was marooned on an island and basically became one of the natives on the island and became friends with all of the animals there and raised a gosling and was basically a mother to the gosling. And then at the end of that book, something happened and Roz, the robot, now finds herself back in the human world where she was intended, and she is working on a farm, which is not exactly what she wants. She wants to be back with her family. And this is the story about how she gets back to where she wants to be. And it is just absolutely beautiful. This was published in 2018 by Piccadilly and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I also read this for the middle grade March challenge, read a book with a non-human main character, because Roz is obviously a robot, she is not human, and the majority of the characters in the book are animals. The second book that I read for middle grade March this week was Sweep, The Story of a Girl and Her Monster by Jonathan Auxier, I think. Obviously I read this as a ebook and this was the group book pick for middle grade March. And it is the story of Nan, who is a young girl living in England. It's sort of a historical / magical realism story. And Nan is a chimney sweep. And the story is sort of told through flashbacks and through present day events. And when Nan was a child, she was raised and worked by a man she called the Sweep. And one day he disappeared and all he left her was his sweep's hat and this lump of coal that almost acts like it has a mind of its own. And then one day, many years from the time when the Sweep disappeared, Nan finds herself trapped in a chimney, and as a result of the actions to try and free her, something awakens in this lump of coal, and it is a really beautiful story of friendship, of finding your inner strength. It is about escaping the confines of being a chimney sweep, because all of the children who are employed, they're kept in poverty and they're owned by their masters, and it's a really sort of confronting story from that perspective. I did find it a little bit slow because historical fiction tends to be like that, and I'm not a big historical fiction person, but the story itself is really, really charming, and I loved sort of the magical realism elements that were woven into the story. It was published in 2018 by Amulet Books and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Inside Out and Back Again by Tana Lay, I think. I'm not entirely sure of the pronunciation. Again, I'll leave the book on the screen because I did read this as an ebook. I read this for the middle grade March challenge to read a book in verse, because the whole thing is told in verse. Was published in 2013 by University of Queensland Press here in Australia, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is the story of a young girl, Ha, who lives in Saigon with her mother and her brothers, and then they have to flee the country during the Vietnam War, and they take a boat to America, and it is about her struggles with fitting in and finding a place within this new life, and about being different and about being teased by other children for being different. It's a little bit confronting, and it's very much heartfelt and based on the author's own experiences, which I truly appreciate. I love own voices books, and I love that this one was told in verse. I also read Children of the Dragon, The Relic of the Blue Dragon by Rebecca Lim. This is a Love Oz kids book. It was published in 2018 by Alan Unwin, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't read this for an official prompt for middle grade March. I just read it because it was middle grade March and I'm trying to get through all of my middle grade books. I also want to take this one into my classroom because I think that there's a few kids who'd really enjoy reading it. This is the story of Harley Spark, who is a 13-year-old boy. He lives with his mother and occasionally sees his father. His parents have split up, and his father may or may not be sort of a crime lord who specializes in breaking and entering and stealing things. One day when Harley is out walking, he stumbles across a blue vase with a painted Chinese dragon on it. And he takes this vase home and he unwittingly reignites a centuries-old war between dragons. It is very, very cool. It is a super short read. The second book is coming out this year. I have requested that for review, so I don't know if I'll get that, but I would very much like to read the second book because it's very easy to read. Harley is a very likable main character. His relationship with his parents is very, very funny, and their relationship with one another is hilarious to read because his mother is none too impressed that Harley's father had lied to her about being an underworld crime boss, and an international one at that. But the whole thing is steeped in sort of Chinese mythology, and it was really, really lovely to read. I enjoyed it. It was a very quick read. Highly recommend it. The last middle grade book that I read this week, also not for any of the middle grade March challenges, but one I really, really desperately wanted to read, was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This one I have heard so many people talk about. It was published in 2017 by Piccadilly and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is a fantasy story about a world where every year the youngest child born to the town of Protectorate is left in the woods for the witch, who the town believes if the witch takes a child, she'll leave the town alone. The truth being that the witch, who does actually live in the woods, saves the child. She doesn't know why the child is being placed there at all, because there is a really big mystery surrounding Protectorate. She takes the child and she delivers it to towns on the other side of the forest who raise the children, and those children go on to live long, happy lives. But then on one particular occasion, Shan the witch picks up this child and she accidentally feeds her moonlight, and thus the child grows in magic. And so Shan decides to keep the child and raise her as her own and teach her how to use her magic, and names her Luna. And this is Luna's story about finding her way home, about learning about magic. It is full of wonderful magical creatures, including a tiny little dragon who just absolutely stole the show for me. He was absolutely adorable. He believes that he's huge, but he's super tiny. It is full of magic. It is full of mystery. It has good witches and bad witches, and it's just such a beautiful world. I highly recommend it. Now onto my adult reads, and some of these are quite adult, so if you are not here for that, feel free to skip to the end of the video. This week I managed to read my review copy of Hunter by Jack Heath. This is the second book in the Timothy Blake series. The first one was Huntsman, which I read last year and absolutely adored. This is a 2019 release from Allen and Unwin, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Timothy Blake used to be a consultant for the FBI, although at the start of this book he works as body disposal for a local crime lord. Well, when he stumbles across a body he wasn't meant to find, he takes it and hides it, and then finds himself wrapped up in a case with the FBI that involves the said dead body that he has found. Timothy Blake reconnects with FBI agent Reese Thistle, and the two of them begin investigating this murder, and they quickly unravel a serial killing that takes them all over Texas, trying to find out what exactly is going on, and the whole time Blake is trying to help solve this murder and this crime spree without revealing the fact that he has one of the dead bodies in his freezer. And the whole thing is just bonkers, and it was compelling, and I couldn't look away, even though this thing is confronting in a way because, and feel free to skip over this if you don't want the spoilers, but if you've read the first book then you know it. Timothy Blake is a cannibal, and that is a very weird thing to read about. I'm not someone who gets squeamish very easily, but even I was like, ooh, okay. But I loved it. I absolutely loved reading it. Jack Heath is a great writer, and he keeps your attention from the first page, and you have a lot of sympathy for Timothy Blake, even though he has done really bad things. But you can also see that he knows what he is, and he knows that what he's doing is not right. And I can completely get on board with reading about a character like that. So I really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to the next installment in the series. The ending has set it up beautifully, and I can't wait to get to it. I read a novella called Yours to Uncover by Mel Teschko, which was a 2014 release on Kindle, I believe. It is super short. It is average at best. I think I gave it a 3. It's probably like a 2.5. I can't even remember all of the details about it, so this is gonna go great for this review. But I believe it's set on board a ship that is traveling from Earth to a new settlement. There are prisoners who have been kept on board the ship, and they're going to be used as, you know, cheap labor once they arrive at their new planet. The main character is a soldier aboard the ship, and she has found herself in a very problematic relationship with one of the senior officers, who is very controlling and demanding and, frankly, an arsehole. And she has a fascination with one of the prisoners who was an artist back on Earth, but for some reason has found himself imprisoned, and it's about their relationship, and it's basically all about sex and how they basically overcome this lieutenant's issues. So it was what it was. It was a really quick read, and I think I read it because the second book in the series was written by Shona Husk, who wrote Severed, which I read last week, and I wanted to read something else by her, and I thought, well, I better just read the first book, and because it was a novella, I just thought I'll just read it. Still haven't read the second book yet. We'll see how it goes. It is what it is. It's science fiction, smutty romance thing. And the final book I'll mention really briefly, although I haven't finished reading it, is what I'm currently reading, and that is Arctic Sun by Annabeth Albert. It is the first book in her new series, the Frozen Hearts series. I received a copy of it from NetGalley. It is a 2019 release. I think it might be coming out in April or May. I can't remember exactly when. It is a male romance story set in Alaska, which was enough to intrigue me because I like that setting. I don't really know anything about it. It just intrigues me. And the main premise is that one of the main characters, Griffin, is a recovering alcoholic, and he lives in Alaska. He works with his family. His family has a tourist business where they host tours for people who want to take photographs of the local Alaskan scenery. Griffin himself mostly flies cargo planes, and he doesn't really get involved with the customer side of things. He's not very good around people until his uncle, who normally does that side of things, has to go and have an operation, and so Griffin has to take over. In this tour group is a former supermodel named River, who has bright blue hair and has his own issues. He is also recovering, but from having an eating disorder earlier in his life, and so he has problematic issues with food. And I'm about 50% of the way through this book. It's a little bit slower than some of her other books, and I also think it's a bit longer than some of Annabeth Albert's other books. I am enjoying what I'm reading so far, but I'm very curious to see what happens in the second half of the book, because it's taken this long to sort of get to a point, and I'm just waiting to see what happens. But I am enjoying it. It's a very easy read. I enjoy reading her male romance books. They go into a lot more detail. It's really about the connection between the two love interests, and I appreciate that. So those are the books that I read this week. In the comments below, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you are planning on reading them. Are you participating in Middle Grade March? Let me know as well. And if you have any book talks on middle grade books, I would love to hear them. I'm hoping to read a whole stack more middle grade books next week. Fingers crossed, because I'm really enjoying it. It is a lot of fun. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.